Can you believe it? This HOA Karen had the audacity to call the cops on me for trespassing, yelling, "Get this criminal out," in a shrill 3-minute tirade that could wake the dead. The kicker? I'd just closed the deal on that house 30 minutes earlier, barely stepping onto my own property before she pounced. The whole neighborhood gawked as security hauled me off like some kind of fugitive while she strutted around with her clipboard like a victorious general, dialing 911 faster than she'd order a pepperoni. Little did she know, that house was already mine, and her 3-minute power trip was about to collide with 30 minutes of delicious payback. The afternoon sun blazed over Crestview Heights as I pulled up to the house on Maple Street, my palms clammy with excitement. This was it, the Tudor-style dream I'd chased for months, with its stunning brick facade and those bay windows that seemed to sparkle with promise. Walter Grayson was finally showing me around, and I could already imagine barbecues in that backyard, maybe even welcoming the golden retriever I'd always wanted. My phone buzzed with Sophie's text. "Good luck. House hunter. Remember, if anyone gives you trouble, just smile and wave." Oh, how those words would ring true. I stepped out, smoothing my best polo shirt, inhaling the scent of freshly cut grass and new beginnings, until 3 minutes peace exploded with the sharp click of heels on pavement. Excuse me, what do you think you're doing here?" The voice could peel paint off a barn. I turned to face her, Brenda Sullivan, though I didn't know her name yet. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you have any confrontation with the HOA. We will narrate your story on our channel. I didn't know her name yet, marching toward me with her chin raised so high, I wondered if she could even see where she was stepping. She wore a power blazer in 90-degree weather and clutched a clipboard like it was Excalibur behind her. I noticed them, spy cameras mounted everywhere, swiving, like mechanical eyes tracking my every move. "I'm here to see Walter about the house," I said, keeping my voice steady even as my shifty eyes probably gave away my nervousness. He's expecting me, but Brenda's eyes narrowed to slits, and she whipped out her phone faster than lightning. "Unregistered visitor trespasser on HOA property." She screeched into her phone, and every curtain on the street twitched. "Security. I need you here in 3 minutes. This trespasser's too close to our HOA gate." Her voice climbed higher. With each word, Margaret Evans peeked out from her garden next door, her face twisted with concern, and I heard her mutter, "This ain't right." Before she slipped back toward her house, Tom Carter stopped his lawnmower, mid-stripe, shook his head with disgust, grumbled something about, "Here we go again," and walked away. Meanwhile, Brenda continued her performance, waving her arms dramatically. The rules clearly state that all visitors must be pre-registered with the HOA office 24 hours in advance. This is a gated community. The security golf cart screeched around the corner, and 2 guards jumped out. "This trespasser needs to be removed immediately," Brenda commanded, jabbing her finger at me. "He's been here for 3 whole minutes without proper documentation." The younger guard shot me an apologetic look, while his older partner let out a deep sigh. "Sir, we're going to have to escort you out," he said, and I felt my dream house slipping away as they marched me back to my car. I caught Walter watching from his window, his face showing frustration and disappointment. The walk of shame past those twitching curtains felt eternal. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, my heart sinking with each step away from my dream. My hands shook as I fumbled for my keys, biting my lip to keep from saying something I'd regret. "She think this is Game of Thrones or what?" I whispered, then immediately called Sophie as I drove away, my voice trembling with rage. "You won't believe what just happened," I said, giving her the play-by-play. "Brenda dials 911 faster than I call Uber," she quipped, but the sting of being dragged out like a criminal burned hot. As I reached the main road, something inside me snapped. Not badly, but like a switch flipping. From victim to fighter, I wasn't going to let some power-drunk HOA president stop me from buying my dream house. But here's where things get interesting. Brenda stood there on the sidewalk, clutching some paper that she waved around, shouting, "Trespasser!" To her gathering HOA minions, "Come back, trespasser, and I'll call 911 to erase you from Crestview for good," she threatened. "I'll have you arrested. Your name will be mud in every respectable neighborhood." She was already planning my destruction, mobilizing her forces. I looked directly at you through my rearview mirror and said, "Your 3 minutes can mess you up." But 30 minutes earlier, that's the real tea. The thing Brenda didn't know was that her trespasser had already been to that house 30 minutes before her grand performance. Before her 3-minute security call, I'd already made my move while she was probably inside adjusting her spy cameras. I was securing my future in her kingdom. How do you outsmart a queen? Calling cops in 3 minutes, I asked you. Simple, you make your moves 30 minutes before she even knows. There's a game the security guards thought they'd removed a problem. Brenda thought she'd defended her territory, but they were all wrong. What happened in those crucial 30 minutes before Brenda's meltdown? Well, that's where this story really begins. Being a car salesman teaches you things: how to read people, how to know when they're bluffing, and how to close a deal when everything's against you. So when I first contacted Walter Grayson about his house 3 days ago, I heard something in his voice that told me everything. The exhaustion when he mentioned HOA requirements. The way he sighed before saying Crestview Heights. The bitter laugh when I asked about the neighborhood. This wasn't just a man selling a house. This was a man looking for escape. "Listen," he'd said, dropping his voice, "if you're serious about buying, we need to be strategic. The HOA president makes things difficult." That's when I knew I'd found not just a seller, but an ally. We arranged to meet at 7:30 in the evening when most people would be inside, and when a certain HOA president might be distracted. The plan was simple but risky. I'd approached from 2 blocks away, dressed as a delivery driver, and slip in through Walter's back door during the blind spot in Brenda's surveillance network. I'd done my homework, studied the neighborhood layout, identified camera positions, timed patrol routes. Sophie thought I'd lost my mind when I showed her my hand-drawn map. "You're going full Mission Impossible for a house showing." She'd laughed, but she didn't understand this was about proving that no one could stop me from achieving my dreams. At 7:15, I pulled up 2 blocks away, my heart hammering as I slipped into the delivery uniform I'd borrowed. The transformation was completed with a baseball cap pulled low and a fake package under my arm. For the final touch, I practiced my southern drawl, different enough from my normal voice. The walk to Walter's house felt like crossing a minefield. The cameras were everywhere, mounted on corners. Hidden in fake rocks, probably. In those garden gnomes, Brenda had turned Crestview Heights into her personal surveillance state. But every system has weaknesses. There was a blind spot near the big oak tree in Walter's backyard, a 16F stretch, where no cameras could see. I moved through shadows like smoke, clutching my fake package, trying to look like just another delivery guy, even though sweat dripped down my back. Every rustle made me freeze. Every dog bark sent my pulse racing. But I kept thinking about that 16-year-old version of myself, falsely accused and powerless. This man wasn't going to be powerless. I reached the blind spot and practically dove for Walter's back door. knocking our pattern 2 quick, 3 slow, 1 quick. The door opened immediately, coming quick, Walter whispered, and I slipped into my future home. His living room was rebellion incarnate, comfortable furniture, violating HOA guidelines, walls painted in unapproved colors, and garden gnomes on his mantel, definitely not from the approved vendor. "Can I get you something to drink?" he offered, hands trembling slightly. "Let's just get this done." I said we both knew the risk. Walter led me through the house, and with each room I fell deeper in love. Original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, a kitchen window perfectly framing the sunset. "She fined me $300 last month," he said, suddenly, "in what would be my office." My grass was 1/2 inch, too tall 1/2 inch. I measured it myself. It was exactly 2.12 in, right at the limit. "But," she said, 2.75. His voice cracked with frustration. "Selling to you is my middle finger to her." I grinned. Pulling out the contract? "I promise I'll be the neighbor. Brenda can't control the contract," was bulletproof, every line triple-checked against HOA interference. Walter read carefully, his glasses perched on his nose. The clock ticked towards 7:30. "No, she'll come after you," he said. "Finally, she's destroyed people for less." I thought about my younger self, that kid who'd eaten lunch alone for months because of lies. Let her try. I said at exactly 7:30 p.m. Walter signed with a flourish. "The best part?" He chuckled. "She can't stop this sale. HOA rules prevent interference unless you're on a criminal registry." We laughed and I tucked my copy safely away, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and opened the app. My tech friend created it could tap into publicly accessible feeds, including unsecured whole cameras. "What are you doing?" Walter asked. "Starting my meltdown playlist." I grinned. Every time Brenda rants, I'll have a record. The app was already picking up audio from cameras near Brenda's house. Walter shook his head in amazement. "You really thought of everything." He winked. "When you've been falsely accused, once you learn to document everything, the journey back out was nerve-wracking. I had the contract now, my future, my vindication. I stuck to shadows in my delivery disguise, but near the oak tree, I heard voices. My blood froze as Brenda's screech carried across the air. "That suspicious person was spotted. We need patrols." "I'm updating the HOA group trespasser alert," I pressed, against the tree heart hammering. She was walking away, probably to harass someone else. I waited until silence returned before making my dash to safety in my car. 2 blocks away, I finally breathed. My hands shook as I called Sophie. "Mission accomplished." I said, "Contract signed." She whooped loudly. "You're playing chess while Brenda's playing checkers." But checking my phone, I saw Brenda's post. On the HOA page, "Urgent trespasser. Spotted. This individual is damorous. If seen, call me immediately." With a blurry photo, but then I noticed her mistake. She claimed she'd spotted the trespasser at approximately 7:30 p.m. near Grayson's property. I looked at you and shook my head. "You'll ever sneak past to Karen's cameras? It's wild. But here's the irony. At 7:30 p.m., I wasn't trespassing. I was signing a legal contract. You can't trespass on property. You're buying as..." I drove home. I pictured Brenda in her office, slamming papers, screaming about shredding my deal by tomorrow. This trespasser's name will be trash, and I'll have cops haul him out. She was probably vowing 3 minutes to gloat, but my 30-minute deal was locked. Could I stay ahead when she realized her trespasser was her new neighbor? By sunrise, Brenda had transformed Crestview Heights into her personal war zone. Sophie's fake profile in the HOA group was exploding. 47 posts from Brenda between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. "Emergency HOA meeting. "Tonight mandatory attendance," screamed the main post. "A trespasser threat to our community." The comments were paranoid rants. This trespasser wore a disguise. Who knows what crimes he's planning? Another, "I have life-ruining proof that will shock you," or my favorite, "missing. This meeting means you don't care about our children's safety." Sophie called me during breakfast, barely speaking through laughter. "She's comparing you to a terrorist because you wanted to buy a house." This woman needs therapy, but under the humor, I felt that familiar knot. The same one from when I was 16, falsely accused of cheating on a test. I'd studied for harder than anything. The accusation had spread through school, like a wildfire. And even after being cleared, the damage was done. Friends avoided me. Teachers looked differently at me, and I spent high school as that kid who cheated, though I never did. History was repeating itself, but this time I wasn't powerless. I had resources, allies, and most importantly, a legally binding contract making me bulletproof. Still, I knew how witch hunts worked. Truth didn't matter when someone with power wanted to destroy you. I spent lunch on the phone with my lawyer, ensuring every detail was airtight. "She can't stop the sale?" He assured me, "Whole rules are clear, no interference unless the buyer's on a criminal registry." I smiled grimly. "What about after I move in?" There was a pause. "She can make life difficult. But if you document everything, and she crosses lines, you might have harassment grounds." Perfect. I made sure my phone was charged with plenty of storage. Tonight's meeting would be one for the Meltdown playlist by 6:45. I was parked down the street in a rental, watching residents file into the community center. Margaret Evans walked slowly, shoulders hunched. Tom Carter stomped up the steps, his face suggesting he'd rather be anywhere else through binoculars. I watched Brenda at the door with her clipboard, checking names like a power-drunk hall monitor. She dressed in what I call dictator chic, a red Powers suit, screaming authority at exactly 700p. She marched inside. I couldn't hear everything, but Sophie was inside using her aunt's address. Her texts were gold. She has a PowerPoint comic, Sans font, who uses Comic Sans for a witch hunt. Then she's showing security footage of you in delivery. Outfit circled in red, with arrows, labeled Tess. Responded, "There's dramatic music." The next text chilled me. She's waving an official-looking document, says it proves you're a criminal element. People are muttering. Then she's put up a sign on the HOA board, literally says "Trespasser," with your photo under a spotlight. This was high school again. A lie repeated with conviction, becoming truth. I gripped the wheel knuckles, white, fighting the urge to storm in, but that's what she wanted instead. I recorded through the window, adding to my Brenda collection inside. According to Sophie, Brenda had moved to performance art. She's acting out, finding you on footage, gasping, clutching chest, pointing at screen. But it was working, people whispered, shooting dark looks at my image. Then Brenda's big moment. This trespasser has been stalking our neighborhood, seen near Grayson's property, clearly casing it. But don't worry, Walter assures me, no. Sale to criminal elements, that's when things shifted. Sophie texted, "Walter's here standing." I held my breath as Walter, in his non-approved cardigan, rose from his chair through the window. I watched him turn and walk out mid-sentence. Sophie confirmed, "He just left." Silent, Brenda's face is purple. Brenda tried recovering, but her voice had risen an octave. She launched into a revealing monologue. "My old town shunned me. They took my job, said I was too demanding. My husband left for someone easier. But this is my domain. I am queen here, and I won't let some trespasser destroy what I've built." The room went silent. She'd basically admitted, using her position for personal issues. "I propose emergency assessment, $500 per household for enhanced security, more cameras, background checks for all visitors. Tom Carter stood up then, all 6 feet of grumpy contractor, demanding why they needed more cameras when Brenda had more surveillance than the Pentagon. This led to Brenda accusing Tom of being soft on crime, which led to Tom reminding everyone about her finding him for grass being too green compared to neighbors. "You said it created aesthetic imbalance," he roared. Margaret tried speaking about giving people benefit of doubt, but Brenda shut her down with a freezing look. "Anyone defending this trespasser isn't committed to our property values. Perhaps they should find a different neighborhood." The threat hung like toxic fog. Several people about to speak suddenly found their shoes interesting. Sophie lasted 20 more minutes before having to leave or blow, cover from laughing, but she managed one crucial photo, the document Brenda waved when she sent it. I zoomed in and my jaw dropped a printout from a sketchy background check website, the kind calling anyone a killer. For 1995, my name topped it with fabricated red flags, multiple addresses. I'd moved like normal people employment in sales. Car salesman was suspicious now. Single male, apparently criminal. In Brenda's world, the kicker. Risk level high. Recommend extreme caution, $20 to a scam. Site for ammunition presented like FBI evidence as the meeting ended. I watched residents file out. Some looked convinced, glancing suspiciously at shadows. Others seemed skeptical, especially Tom, gesticulating wildly to neighbors. But Margaret Evans struck me most. She paused at the door, looking back, and even from distance I saw her conflict. Her lips moved, body language screaming guilt. She knew something was wrong but was too afraid to stand against the whole president who could make life miserable. She slipped into night, and I noted in every witch hunt there were doubters, and doubt cracked any tyrant's foundation. I started the rental and drove home, mind racing. Brenda had painted me as public enemy. But she'd revealed her playbook and weakness. So used to people rolling over, she'd never developed defense against fighters. As I parked, I looked at you directly. Ever been called criminal for buying a house? Crest views wild yawl, but witch hunts only work if the witch doesn't have receipts. And baby, I've got receipts, contracts and footage about to make Brenda famous wrong. But I felt the storm building. Brenda wouldn't stop with one meeting. By her admission, this HOA was all she had, left the folder she'd clutched, grinning. Like finding the Holy Grail was just beginning. By tomorrow, she'd have flyers, patrols, maybe connections called by tomorrow. This trespasser's name will be trash in Crestview, and I'll have cops haul him out. She'd promised 3 minutes to destroy reputation. 3 minutes to poison community, but I was 30 minutes ahead, and that gap would become an uncrossable chasm. The next evening's HOA meeting was supposed to be my moment of triumph. I'd rehearsed my speech a dozen times, keeping it professional. Despite my burning desire for revenge, Sophie had coached me, stay calm, present facts, let her dig her own grave. But walking into that community center at 7:15 p.m. felt like entering a courtroom where I was already convicted. The entire neighborhood had packed the room, sitting in rows like a jury, ready to condemn. And there stood Brenda at the front, purple power suit, gleaming under fluorescent lights, with a projection screen behind her showing my blurry image labeled Trespasser in blood-red font. That same sign from yesterday's meeting still dominated the HOA board spot, lit like a museum exhibit of paranoia. The atmosphere was thick with judgment, whispers following me like shadows as I searched for a seat. I tried sitting in the back, but Brenda's voice sliced through the murmur like a rusty blade. Well, look who decided to show up. Every head swiveled toward me in perfect synchronization, and I felt like prey spotted by a pack of predators. My hands started shaking, that familiar tremor from my past, but I forced them steady as I stood. "Good evening, everyone. I am Lucas Harper, and I am here to clear up some misunderstandings." The words emerged steadier than I felt, even as Brenda's face twisted into what she probably thought was a triumphant smile. "Misunderstandings?" she shrieked, already grabbing her phone with theatrical flair. "The only misunderstanding is you thinking you can infiltrate our community. I have evidence." She clicked her laptop, and suddenly the screen filled with grainy security footage of me in the delivery, uniforms circled in red with dramatic arrows. This trespasser was caught on camera sneaking around the Grayson property. Brenda's voice climbed octaves with each word, her manicured finger stabbing at the screen, wearing a disguise using deception. Who knows what crimes he was planning? The crowd erupted in murmurs as some shooting suspicious glares my way, others shifting uncomfortably at the theatrical display. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out the folded contract with hands. I fought to keep steady, actually, if you'll let me explain. But Brenda was already dialing her phone on speaker for maximum drama. 911. Yes, this is Brenda Sullivan, HOA president at Crestview Heights, the trespasser. I reported yesterday. He's back. He's at our community center right now. She practically sang the words, promising the dispatcher 2 minutes would be perfect timing. The dispatcher's calm voice filled the room. "Ma'am, is this person currently threatening anyone or committing a crime?" Brenda's eyes gleamed with malicious joy. "He's trespassing. He's been stalking our neighborhood. I have video evidence. This trespasser's back and trying to con his way. In the sheer audacity of giving police a time limit would have been funny if my future wasn't hanging by a thread." Neighbors started demanding action. "Get 'em out." Someone shouted, "We don't want criminals here." Another added. The mob mentality was taking hold, and I froze, my body refusing to move as the hostility washed over me. The contract slipped from my trembling hands, floating to the floor like my dying dreams. Suddenly I was 16 again, falsely accused, abandoned, watching my life crumble over lies. I couldn't fight the flashback. Hit hard, teenage me, standing before the school board, test papers in hand trying to prove my innocence while classmates whispered cheater behind my back. Teachers who'd praised me now looked away. Friends vanished like smoke even after being cleared. The damage was permanent. I ate alone, walked alone, existed alone. That same helplessness crashed over me now as Brenda continued her performance. "This is what happens when we let our guard down," she preached, "when we don't maintain standards. This trespasser represents everything wrong with society." The room spun slightly as my breath came short through the chaos. I caught Margaret Evans biting her lip, guilt written across her face. Tom Carter's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Sirens wailed closer, red and blue lights painting the parking lot in alternating splashes of trouble. Officer Daniel Brooks entered. I recognized him from around town, a fair cop who looked exhausted before even speaking. "Okay, what's going on here?" Brenda practically launched herself at him, words tumbling out in a shrill cascade about trespassers and threats and violated sanctity. Officer Brooks held up one hand, his expression suggesting he'd rather be getting a root canal. "Sir," he said, turning to me with surprising gentleness, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside while we sort this out." Not an arrest, but it felt like defeat as I bent to retrieve my contract from the floor hand still shaking. "This isn't over," I managed, looking directly at Brenda before scanning the room of neighbors who'd condemned me without knowing truth. Margaret. Evans wouldn't meet my eyes, but something in her expression screamed doubt, maybe even shame. Tom Carter looked ready to explode, but stayed silent. As Officer Brooks escorted me out professionally, just a guiding hand on my elbow. My phone buzzed. Urgently, Sophie's text blazed across the screen. "I've got Brenda's darkest secret on lock, the fake HOA election records, the embezzlement, everything that witch is about to learn. What happens when you mess with my best friend?" My trembling hands stared at the message, heart pounding with mixed humiliation and hope. Officer Brooks noticed my reaction. "You okay, son?" he asked quietly, something in his tone suggesting he'd seen this HOA power trip before. "Officer, I legally purchased that house," I said, showing him the contract, signed and notarized yesterday at 7:30 p.m., 30 minutes before she called security on me. He examined it carefully, eyebrows rising. "This looks legitimate. Why didn't you report her false claims yesterday?" I laughed. "Bitterly would you have believed the new guy over the HOA president?" He sighed, handed back my contract. "Fair point, look, I can't get involved in civil disputes," but he glanced back at the community center where Brenda's voice still carried through. "Walls between you and me? We've had 5 complaints about HOA overreach this year, all involving Miss Sullivan. Document everything," as he headed back inside to handle whatever paperwork Brenda demanded. "I looked directly at you, my audience, in this insane drama. You're feeling this HOA chaos yet?" I asked, managing a shaky smile. Despite everything, Brenda's 3-minute stunt's about to crash, thanks to my 30-and-out ace. But what's Sophie hiding? I climbed into my car contract, safely, pocketed phone buzzing. With more messages from Sophie, each notification felt like another nail for Brenda's coffin. She thought she'd won by humiliating me publicly, by calling cops in 2 minutes flat like I was some dangerous criminal. But Brenda was about to learn what happens when you push someone who's got nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Her 3-minute power play felt like victory to her. But my 30-and-up timeline was about to rewrite the entire game. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. Rain hammered my windshield. As I sat in my car outside my apartment complex, matching the storm. Inside my chest, Brenda's latest assault had arrived that morning, an official-looking letter threatening to pursue all legal means to prevent unlawful occupation of property within Crestview Heights by criminal elements. That's what I'd become in her twisted narrative. The paper was already soaked for my shaking hands as I read it for the 5th time. Rain pounding like it wanted to wash away my dreams along. With everything else, this wasn't just about a house anymore. Patterns were repeating. 16-year-old me falsely accused and shunned. 32-year-old me. Same story, different chapter. The letter crumpled in my grip, ink running like my hope, bleeding away suddenly. Furious pounding on my passenger window made me jump. Sophie stood there in a yellow raincoat, umbrella in one hand, laptop bag in the other, looking like an avenging angel in the storm. She yanked the door open and dove inside, shaking water everywhere. "Stop moping," she commanded. Seeing my defeated posture, "I hate seeing you like this again. Remember, when you helped me fight that wrongful termination case last year, when everyone said I should give up, you told me bullies only win when good people stop fighting. So straighten up, because I've got ammunition that's going to blow Brenda's whole kingdom to pieces." She flipped open her laptop screen, illuminating her determined fate. "First, you need to know why this is personal for me too. Remember when I mentioned getting fined by the HOA? It was Brenda, $200 for parking, slightly off the curb, while visiting my Aunt Six in off. She measured it with a ruler. The laptop screen exploded with documents, emails, bank records, meeting, minutes, spanning 3 years. Sophie's fingers flew across the keyboard as she explained her detective work. Your friend's app isn't the only tech weapon we have. I've been digging into HOA records, supposedly public, but Brendan makes accessing them nearly impossible unless you know someone who works at a bank and understands financial documents. She pulled up an email thread that made my jaw drop. Look, 3 years ago, HOA election. Brenda won by exactly 5 votes. But check these emails between her and the property management company. She had them lose 73 mail-in ballots that were likely against her. She literally stole the election. The evidence was right there, in black and white. Brenda's own words condemning her. But Sophie was just warming up. More documents appeared. Invoices, receipts, bank transfers that painted a picture of systematic theft she's been embezzling. Sophie stated flatly, those security cameras she loves, HOA paid $40. Zero actual cost $15,000. Guess whose personal account received a mysterious $25,000 deposit the next day? My mind reeled as Sophie revealed fraud after fraud, special assessments for improvements that never happened, fines going into a general fund that never appeared on official reports, maintenance contracts to her cousin's company at triple market rate. She's stolen at least a H100. 000 over 3 years, Sophie concluded, and she's been using her position to cover it up, terrorizing anyone who questions her. The scope of Brenda's corruption was staggering. That's when we heard her, before we saw her, Brenda's voice screeching through the rain as she stormed down the block. Support this trespasser and I'll kick you out too. She screamed at someone through the rain-blurred windshield. I watched her marching from house to house like a demented town crier, waving papers. This trespasser thinks he can infiltrate our community. Anyone helping him will face the same consequences. Her voice echoed off buildings, mixing with thunder. Sophie and I exchanged glances as Brenda continued her rampage, completely soaked but too furious to care. Is she seriously going door to door in a thunderstorm? Sophie whispered. That's next level. Unhinged, we watched her pound on Margaret Evans' door, screaming about harboring criminals until Margaret's porch light went off. Why hasn't anyone reported this? I asked, though I knew the answer. Sophie's expression darkened because she destroys anyone who tries. Mr. Smith questioned the budget 2 years ago within a month. 17 violations, liens on his property, forced to sell at a loss. Mrs. Rodriguez tried running against her. Suddenly her son's decade-old misdemeanor was plastered everywhere. Brenda doesn't just fight dirty, she goes nuclear. The rain intensified, drumming the car roof like applause for Brenda's villain. But something shifted in me. The shakiness remained, but underneath a familiar fire was building, the same fire that got me through high school after the false accusation that drove me to succeed, despite everyone writing me off. She's done, I said quietly, and Sophie's grin could have powered the city already ahead of you, she said, pulling up another screen. I've made copies of everything saved in multiple locations, but we need more than documents. We need witnesses willing to speak up, and we need Brenda to overplay her hand publicly. She showed me security footage from various neighbors, cameras, your meltdown. Playlist inspired me. What if we compile every single outburst, every threat, every abuse of power, make it undeniable? I thought about Margaret's guilty expression, Tom's clenched jaw, and all the neighbors too scared to speak the next home meeting. I said slowly, planning forming. She'll expect me to slink away after today's humiliation. Instead, I show up with everything. Sophie's grin widened, and I'll make sure certain authorities are very interested in attending. Financial fraud is still illegal. Even in a blazer, we spent another hour strategizing. Sophie's findings combining with my documentation to create an airtight case. Then she showed me something that made my blood freeze. "Lucas, there's more those background check websites she's investigating. Every resident looking for dirt when she can't find any, another document appeared. She makes it up, fake police reports, forged complaints, manufactured evidence. She has files on everyone. The weight hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. An entire neighborhood was held hostage by a tyrant. She told everyone her old town shunned her." I said, "But what if she did the same thing there?" Sophie nodded grimly. "Already checked. Forced to resign from 2 previous HOA positions in different states. Both times for irregularities, never fully investigated because she fled." I crumpled her threatening letter completely. "She wants to call me a trespasser, paint me as criminal." My voice grew stronger. "Fine, but when I'm done, everyone will know who the real criminal is." As Sophie packed up, she paused. "You know, she'll go nuclear when cornered." Right last meeting, before leaving her previous HOA, she called 911 claiming the entire board was threatening her life. Took weeks to sort out through the rain. We saw Brenda approaching my building. Face wild-eyed with rage, she spotted my car and charged toward us. Sophie grabbed her laptop, time to go, but Brenda was already at my window, hurling something, a ceramic garden gnome, that shattered against the glass. "This trespasser is threatening me," she screamed into her phone, already dialing 911. "He's stalking me now." I smiled grimly as we drove away, Brenda's threats fading in the rain. Let her call my 30-nut deals, about to crush her. Minute tantrum. "What's my knockout punch? Oh, you're gonna love this." Sophie laughed as we disappeared into the storms. "He just committed assault with a garden gnome on camera while making a false police report. Genius move, Brenda." The pieces were all in place. Brenda thought she was fighting a trespasser. She was actually fighting her own karma, and karma had been taking notes for 3 years. The final confrontation was coming, and I had 30 minutes of evidence to her. 3 minutes of rage. The community center had never seen such a crowd. Every seat was filled, people standing along walls, the air electric with anticipation. Word had spread about the special meeting regarding neighborhood security, but everyone knew the real draw was drama. Would the trespasser dare show up again? I walked in at exactly 700 p. M, wearing my best suit, carrying a briefcase containing Brenda's D-whispers, erupted immediately, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. But this time, I didn't slouch or shake. I walked straight to the front row and sat down, making direct eye contact with Brenda, who stood at her podium like a dictator, addressing her subjects. Her face went through a rainbow of colors, red, purple, then a shade of puce that couldn't be healthy, before settling on murderous fury behind her. That T-Rex past her sign still glowed under its spotlight. My blurry photo like a wanted poster from the Old West. Well, Brenda's voice dripped pure venom. "Look who has the audacity to return, ladies and gentlemen. The very threat to our community sits among us." She was already reaching for her phone, ready to speed dial 911 again. But I stood, slowly, project remote in hand, my voice carrying clearly. "Actually, Brenda, I'm glad you called this meeting. I have information the neighborhood needs to see." Before she could object, I hit the button. The screen behind her exploded with the first video from my meltdown playlist. Brenda, screeching about maintaining standards while berating Walter about grass height. Then another clip, her threatening Tom about his too green lawn. Another, her infamous "I am the queen here" monologue. The room grew quieter with each clip, neighbors recognizing their own encounters with Brenda's tyranny, seeing the pattern they'd been too scared to acknowledge. "Turn that off," Brenda shrieked. But I was just warming up. The screen changed to Sophie's findings. Fake election emails highlighted and enlarged for everyone to read. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they absorbed Brenda's own words about losing mail-in ballots. "This is fabricated," Brenda screamed, her voice hitting frequencies that made windows rattle. "This trespasser is trying to frame me, but the evidence kept flowing like a tsunami bank records, showing embezzlement from camera funds, inflated maintenance contracts, mysterious deposits, coinciding with special assessments, 3 years of systematic theft laid out in undeniable black and white." Margaret Evans suddenly stood, her voice shaking, but determined. "I voted in that election. My mail and ballot was one of the ones that went missing. I always wondered what happened to it." Then came the twist nobody expected, especially not Brenda. The door opened and Officer Brooks walked in. But not alone with him were 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit, their expressions suggesting this wasn't a social visit. Miss Sullivan, one said calmly, "We received some interesting documentation about HOA fund irregularities. We'd like to ask you some questions." Brenda's face went white as paper, then flaming red. "This is a setup, that trespasser, but I wasn't done." I clicked to the next slide showing my contract signed at 7:30 p.m., timestamp clearly visible. Then Walter himself stood up, moving to the front of the room where an old-fashioned wall clock hung, the kind with visible hands that everyone could see. "Look at that clock," Walter said loudly, pointing at it. "Right now it shows 7:25 p.m. But 2 nights ago at exactly 7:30 p.m. I was watching that same clock. I sold my house to Lucas Harper 30 minutes before Brenda called security on him. 30 minutes before she started this whole trespasser nonsense. He already owned the property. When she accused him of trespassing on it, the room erupted in chaos. Neighbors started sharing their own stories, mysterious fines, bullying tactics, threats of liens for minor infractions. Tom Carter's voice boomed. She fined me for having a wheelbarrow, visible for 5 minutes, said it was construction debris. Years of suppressed frustration poured out like a broken dam. Brenda's attempts to regain control were drowned in the flood of accusations. But the best part was still coming. Sophie, laptop ready, in the back called out, "Hey, everyone might want to check the HOA's actual bylaws about presidential term limits." She projected them onto a side EC screen section, 4 subsection C. No president can serve more than 2 consecutive terms without a 2/3 majority vote of all homeowners. Not just meeting attendees, all homeowners. Brenda, when exactly did you get that? Vote. The silence was deafening. Brenda's mouth opened and closed soundlessly like a fish out of water. That's an outdated provision. Nobody follows that. But the damage was done. Everything about her presidency was illegitimate. The stolen election, the extended terms, the embezzled funds, all of it built on a foundation of lies. Officer Brooks, who'd been watching with barely concealed satisfaction, finally spoke up. "You know, we've had 5 complaints about overreach in Crestview Heights. This year, every single one involved Miss Sullivan. I think it's time we took those complaints more seriously." The detectives nodded, one reading Brenda her rights, while the other began collecting evidence. But Brenda wasn't going down without a fight. Her face contorted with rage. She pointed at me with a shaking finger. "This is all his fault. The trespasser poisoned everyone against me. I was protecting this neighborhood. I was maintaining standards without me. Property values will plummet. You'll all regret this." But her words fell on deaf ears. The spell was broken. The emperor revealed to have no clothes, the queen dethroned by her own corruption, as the detectives led her toward the door. I couldn't help myself. I laughed, not a chuckle, but a full, loud laugh that filled the room. "I ain't a trespasser," I declared. Still laughing, "I own the house. She's so scared I've bought it fair and square," while she was too busy watching her spy cameras to notice Brenda's face turned volcanic. She broke free for a moment, rushing to her podium and pulling out a folder. "I have evidence, psychological evaluations proving he's unstable, criminal background checks showing." But Margaret Evans had heard enough. The quiet woman marched to the front, steel in her voice. "Those are fake, just like everything else about you, Brenda. I work in medical records. Those document formats, they're from a template website. You've been manufacturing evidence against anyone who threatened you," the final nail in Brenda's coffin, as the detectives firmly escorted her out. Her threats and accusations fading. The room sat in stunned silence before erupting in applause, not for me, for themselves, for finally standing up to tyranny. Walter shook my hand with tears in his eyes. "Son, you didn't just buy a house, you liberated a neighborhood." Tom Carter slapped my back hard enough to bruise. "Should have done this years ago. Good on you, kid." Even Margaret approached, shame and gratitude wearing on her face. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Fear is no excuse." I understood completely. I'd been that scared kid once too, as the meeting transformed into an impromptu celebration. "I look directly at you, my audience in this wild journey. 3 minutes of yelling can't beat 30 minutes of being one step ahead." The celebration was interrupted by one final dramatic moment. Brenda from the parking lot, her voice carrying through the open door. Not the powerful shriek from before, but the cackle of someone whose mind had snapped. "You think you've won, Harper? This isn't over. I'll be back. The trespasser will pay." She waved what looked like another fake document, probably that psychological evaluation she'd mentioned, but the entire room just laughed. The Queen had fallen, her threats now as empty as her stolen throne. Someone started a slow clap that built into thunderous applause as I stood there, contract in hand, surrounded by neighbors, finally free to breathe. I couldn't help but smile. The 16-year-old me, who'd been falsely accused and abandoned, would be proud. Sometimes the good guys do win, especially when they're exactly 30 minutes ahead of the bad guys. 3 minutes to call cops, 3 minutes to destroy a reputation, 3 minutes to abuse power. But all it takes is 30 minutes of truth to bring down an empire built on lies. Brenda's 3-minute reign of terror had met its match in my 30-inning checkmate game over moving day, arrived with perfect sunshine, as if the universe itself was celebrating Brenda's downfall. Neighbors I'd never met came out to help, carrying boxes and furniture with smiles that had been missing for years. Tom Carter showed up with his truck and a crew refusing payment. Consider it community service. He grunted, but I caught him grinning. Margaret Evans brought a casserole and an apology pie. Yes, she'd actually baked. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up sooner," into the crust. The whole neighborhood felt different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Even the HOA-approved roses seemed to bloom brighter. Sophie directed traffic with her usual efficiency, live streaming the whole event to her followers who'd been tracking our drama. "Welcome to the liberation of Crestview Heights," she announced to her phone, where the good guys finally won. The housewarming party that evening was meant to be small, but words spread like wildfire by 70p. And my backyard was packed with neighbors I'd never properly met, all with stories about Brenda's reign of terror. Someone had even made a cake decorated with fondant security cameras and the words "freedom" from surveillance in green frosting. We'd just started the toast when Sophie's eyes went wide, staring at her phone. Lucas, you need to see this." She showed me her screen. Brenda had started a live stream from her car, parked right outside my house. "Citizens of Crestview Heights," Brenda's voice screeched through the phone speaker. "You've been deceived by this trespasser. He's not a legitimate homeowner. I have proof." The party went silent, as everyone pulled out their phones, watching Brenda's meltdown. In real time, her face filled the screen. Makeup smeared hair wild, still wearing the same suit from her arrest 3 days ago. Apparently she'd made bail. This man illegally entered our community. He's been trespassing since day one. I don't care what fake contracts he showed you. She waved papers at the camera. I have the real documentation that proves he's a fraud. The live stream comments were brutal people, calling her delusional suggestions to seek help. But Brenda was beyond caring about public opinion. She'd crossed into complete breakdown territory. Through my front window, I could see her in her car, practically foaming at the mouth as she ranted. 3 years I've protected this neighborhood, 3 years of maintaining standards, and you let this trespasser destroy everything. Margaret Evans stepped forward, pulling out her iPad with surprising determination. "Two can play the live stream game," Margaret said, starting her own broadcast. "Hi everyone, I'm Margaret Evans, and I'm standing in Lucas Harper's legally purchased home while our former HOA president has a breakdown outside." She panned the camera around the party, showing happy neighbors. For those just joining, Brenda Sullivan was arrested 3 days ago for embezzlement, election fraud, and filing false police reports. Now she's outside calling the legal homeowner a trespasser. Again, Margaret's stream quickly gained more viewers than Brenda's, and the comments were savage. "This is what happens when you give a Karen too much power." One reads, "Someone call an ambulance. She needs help," said another. But then Margaret did something unexpected. She started playing her own collection of Brenda footage. "I've been recording too," Margaret confessed to the party while streaming. "Every time she fined me, threatened me, bullied me. I was too scared to do anything before, but not anymore." Her footage was even worse than mine. Brenda measuring grass with a ruler at 16:30. "I'm taking photos of garbage cans placed one in wrong, screaming at Margaret's cat for existing." One clip showed Brenda erecting that Repta sign on the HOA board while cackling about defending the realm. The internet was having a field day. Someone had already created a remix of Brenda's "I Am the Queen" speech set to dramatic music. Another person started a crowdfunding campaign for her therapy bills. The hashtag #CrestviewWarren was trending within an hour. Outside, Brenda had reached peak meltdown. She had gotten out of her car and was now standing on my lawn, technically trespassing herself, screaming at my windows, "Come out and face me. Harper, stop hiding behind your fake deed. You're nothing but a low-life trespasser who conned his way in." She was so focused on her rant that she didn't notice the sprinkler system turn on. The automatic sprinklers set to water at exactly 8 p.m. suddenly erupted around her. Brenda shrieked as water drenched her from multiple angles. Her red sequin dress. Why was she wearing sequins to stalk someone turning into a soggy disaster? She tried to run but slipped on the wet grass landing face, first in mud with a splat that was audible, even inside Margaret's camera, caught everything in crystal clear, a HD. "And there goes our former president," she narrated like a nature documentary watch, as the suburban dictator discovers karma in its natural habitat. The party erupted in laughter as Brenda struggled to stand, slipping twice more before managing to crawl to her car. Her makeup had turned her face into a horror movie poster, and her sequin dress was more mud than fabric. Tom Carter raised his beer to Lucas, the man who ended tyranny, with a piece of paper signed at 7:30 p.m. Everyone toasted as Brenda's car peeled out, her live stream still running, but now showing only the car ceiling, as she sobbed about trespassers and injustice. Sophie pulled up the stats on her phone. Her live stream just hit peak viral 2 million views, and climbing the internet has named it the fall of the HOA queen. Someone's already selling t-shirts. She showed me a design featuring Brenda's mud-covered face with new queen in town karma underneath. I shook my head in amazement. 3 minutes of calling cops couldn't save her from 30 minutes of planning ahead, I said. Margaret chimed in, her 3-minute tantrums finally met their match, and your 30-newt checkmate. The party continued late into the night, neighbors sharing stories, laughing. Finally free to enjoy their community without fear of arbitrary fines or surveillance. Even Officer Brooks stopped by off-duty to congratulate me and inform us that Brenda's charges had been upgraded to include cyber-stalking. The next morning brought the final chapter of Brenda's downfall. A process server arrived with papers. The entire neighborhood was suing her for harassment fraud and emotional distress. Her assets would be frozen pending investigation. But the real kicker came from Walter, who called with news. Lucas, you're not going to believe this. The state HOA oversight board just announced they're investigating every HOA Brenda ever ran. Turns out Crestview Heights was her third attempt at building a kingdom. She left the same trail of destruction. Everywhere I hung up and looked around my new home, peaceful in the morning light. No spy cameras watching, no clipboard wielding dictator measuring grass, no fear of arbitrary punishment. I turned to you one last time, my audience who'd followed this wild journey. Dang, I beat Brenda. What's your 3-minute Karen nightmare? Or 30-minute comeback spill below. Tag a friend who'd love Brenda's mudflop and subscribe for more epic takedowns. Because here's the truth. Every neighborhood has a Brenda, someone who confuses authority with tyranny, but they only win if we let them. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up, armed with facts and a contract signed 30 minutes before the drama begins. Brenda thought she was queen of Crestview Heights, but she forgot the most important rule in America. We don't do queens, we do justice. And justice, it turns out, has perfect timing. Still here, you're one of us now. Subscribe to Bay's Stories and binge like your group chat depends on